Welcome to Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where you'll hear from industry leaders in science, technology, and innovation about the power of strategic storytelling. With decades of experience, our guests will share their own insights and real-world stories to help you avoid red light barriers and ignite green light solutions, from the Zoom room to the boardroom. In each episode, we'll corkscrew downward into the guests' personal experiences of challenge and success, highlighting strategies that turn complex ideas into clear, compelling storylines for stakeholders. Here is where expert minds share stories that shape the future. What's more, you'll walk away with tips to try immediately to drive the vision of innovation with your team. Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Skalicky. Welcome to the next episode of Red Light, Green Light, the podcast where we bring you incredible guests who have decades of experience and a lot of wisdom and stories to share with you about their roles and their industries. I'm so excited today to bring to you all Marie Zimenoff. She is the CEO of the Career Thought Leaders Consortium, and she currently lives here in Denver, Colorado. Hi, Marie. It's so great to see you.
Hi, Cindy. It's so glad to be back and to share stories with you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. For our listeners, they wouldn't know this, but I think it's fun to share and maybe kick it off with a little bit of a story. But Marie and I got to know each other right at the very, very beginning of On Point growing, and at the very, very beginning of Marie being the CEO at CTL. And it was Marie who gave me one of those opportunities early on to speak as I got On Point off the ground. And I was always so grateful, still remain grateful to you for the opportunity, Marie, and all the amazing people I've met and have stayed in touch with since that conference back in Denver. What year would that have been, Marie? It was like 2000.
It was 2017, I think.
17? Okay.
Yeah, somewhere there. Yeah.
Yes.
No, because I was still pregnant. I was still pregnant, so it was 2016.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we worked on your keynote for that event, and it was so beautifully done, and you've stayed at the helm, and it's just grown beautifully. So why don't you tell our listeners a little about you, how you arrived at this place in your career from the beginnings?
Yeah. So like many people, especially in the helping professions, my CPA, when I first started my business, he called me the reluctant entrepreneur because I didn't see that, right? My mom was a school teacher. My dad was a government employee, and I thought I'd work at the university forever. But then I started to notice that I wasn't able to get the ideas that I wanted to put into motion. And we ended up staying in Fort Collins, Colorado, when I had interviews and things to move out into the higher education space in other cities across the country. And so at that point, it was like, well, okay, if I want to keep doing this work, which I love, the careers space and working in that industry, my option really was to either drive a long ways for a job every day, which I grew up in a town with one stoplight. So driving to Denver every day for work was just not going to
perspective.
No. And so it was like, okay, I'm going to go out and do this work on my own. Thankfully, I had a lot, thankfully, I don't know. It was during the Great Recession.
Okay.
And so there was a lot of people that needed help.
Yes.
And so it was
this like resume writing mostly, Marie, right? At this time?
Well, so it was resume writing. I was also teaching classes at the Workforce Center, a local one-stop Department of Labor, because there were so many people coming to that center that the staff there had never worked with engineers and management and folks that were getting laid off that had never come to a Workforce Center before.
Interesting. Okay. This was like 2008. Everybody listening probably knows where they were during those years, whether school or not, but okay, keep going.
Yeah. So I leave the university, the most stable job around, in 2008 while the market is crashing.
Nice.
But there were so many people that needed help. And I had a lot of different plates spinning. So sometimes
Mhm.
people will be like, oh, when you start out as an entrepreneur, there's all this anti-hustle culture right now, which I understand. Like, we've got to be
Mhm.
careful with that.
Mhm.
I think any entrepreneur will tell you that at the beginning, there's going to be hustle. Like,
Yep.
there's just no way around that.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sure you felt that in your
Oh
business
my
too.
gosh. Well, yes. And I hustled pretty much to do anything that could get me in front of a group of people to hear me speak, or to go to an audience to listen to other people speak and to network my brains out, which is what I know you're really good at as well. So yeah, you had a lot of people and you didn't have probably quite enough lifeboats, right, to help save all the people who were trying to find their way toward these positions and roles. And some of them really high level engineers, scientists. That's an interesting insight from that time that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So we were, I was doing things at the Workforce Center. I was writing resumes for other more established businesses across the nation.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing my own practice, trying to grow my own practice. I was frequenting all of the job search clubs in the
Mm-hmm.
area that were still meeting in person. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'd go and be a speaker. I'd go and help out at their job fairs just to try to learn
Mm-hmm.
and to be of service.
Yep.
Um, and so that became this, like, I'm a big picture person. I
Okay.
wanted to create classes. I wanted to teach, train the trainers.
Yes.
I like doing the one-on-one work as well, but I just saw so much opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
especially for people that didn't have a lot of professional development dollars. Our local
Yep.
workforce center staff wanted to learn, but they
Yep.
couldn't send all 60 of them to the trainings that I
Yeah.
was going to.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so I
So you
started to
wanted to
develop
like
trainings.
scale, right? Like
Right.
scale your ability to help by doing courses and train the trainers, workbooks, workshops, stuff like that. Is that where you're going?
Yeah. So I
Okay.
got pulled in by the local workforce center to do
Yes.
train their staff. And at this point, right, like, I am young, but
Mhm.
I'm going out and doing all these things because I have the opportunity to.
Yes.
And so then I would bring it back to them. And that's when, like, 2014, so right around 10 years ago, like you were saying,
Mhm.
the women who had founded Career Thought Leaders and Resume Writing Academy in the mid 90s, they called me and they said, we're looking to, get a new person in to lead this business. They never really retire because they're still helping
Mhm.
people, but
Okay.
they said, we're looking for someone new to lead the business. And so actually I'm coming up almost exactly on my 10-year reunion
Oh
as
my
we're recording
gosh.
this. Yeah.
So great. I love it.
Yeah, where I went and learned what they had started and took over their business and really got to fulfill that, what
Mm.
I wanted to do, which was be able to create systems and structures and programs that help career
Oh,
practitioners be
so
better at their
great.
work.
And the practitioners, not this was a big noodle for me to figure out when we first met. I was like, wait, are you working with the people who need the jobs? And you're like, no, I'm working with the people who work with the people who need the jobs. So before we go into CTL, because I want you to explain that to our audience, tell me and remind me, how did you know these women who ended up calling you and saying, hey, Marie, would you please buy this and run this?
Yeah, so this is a little tip for people out there. A lot of people in my space and in the roles that I'd been in. So I'd been president of the Colorado Career Development Association. I'd been president of some other organizations in the space. And some of the people in those organizations were very territorial.
Hmm.
Well, we're not going to partner with this organization, or those people can't come and be speakers
Hmm.
because they're competitors.
Hmm.
And when I got into those leadership roles, I was like, y'all, this is silly. Like,
Yeah.
everybody in
Yes.
our industry wants multiple certifications. They want to learn as much as they can.
Yep.
There's no need to be
Hmm.
territorial. So these women that own Career Thought Leaders and Resume Writing Academy, Louise Kurzmark and Wendy Anelo, I had met them at conferences. I had invited them to speak at events where I was the leader of the other organization at the
Hmm.
time. I had demonstrated that collaborative spirit. And
Hmm.
so when they were looking to move on, I was actually serving as the treasurer of another organization at that time, and I had to step down from that role
Hmm.
so that I could take over this
Okay.
practice.
Yep.
Um, but it was just that openness
Yes.
to collaboration that
Yes.
has actually led to, since Career Thought Leaders, I've purchased 2 other businesses.
Okay.
And
Wow.
every time it's because I had a relationship with the person and
Yes.
had
What?
collaborated with them throughout
Yeah.
whatever the
Oh,
years.
that's a beautiful story and lesson. And I would say your story reminds me of a quick tidbit that I can like say yes, absolutely 100%. When I first came on the scene here in Colorado in, 10 years, I'm in my 10th year as well. I met with a couple of other presentation skills coaches, and one of them who's become a very dear friend of mine, Jana, and now helps some of our clients as well. She looked me right in the eye, shook my hand, and said, "It's really nice to meet you. And there's a lot of people out there for both of us to help." And I want to tell you something like that really affected me. And here's why. I kind of was a competitive by nature sort of person growing up. I had 2 big brothers, like kill your own meat, get out there and elbow people around. I played softball. I was a competitor. And so I wasn't expecting her to say that. And then when she did, and I like it diffused me, and I changed the way that I see networking from that moment onward. And I have taken that path forward. So, yeah, pay attention to how you network, everybody. It matters, and be a good light to others. So, yeah, great story. Okay, Marie, tell us about CTL.
Yes. So that kind of abundance mindset has permeated through my community. And we built a community of career services providers, so coaches, resume writers, personal branding strategists, people
Mm,
whose life
yep,
work is helping other people succeed at work,
yeah.
executive coaches, somewhat, and those types of folks. We have a community that comes together. We share best practices. I mean, obviously, my mission, my love is creating those systems and structures so that people don't have to start over with every client and they can really
Mm-hmm.
focus on the client instead of the process, because I'm giving them the process that they can then
Right.
use with their clients.
Oh, that's
And
so great.
so, yeah, we do that in Career Thought Leaders, we do that in Resume Writing Academy, and just giving them those processes, but then also supporting the environment where we're learning together,
Mm-hmm.
because it is such a big space. I mean, when we were even
Yeah.
just talking about what topic are we going to cover, right? You got resumes, job search, interviewing, advancement in your career. Like it's
Yeah.
just the
Yeah.
economy, the future of jobs. Like there's just a lot
Mm-hmm.
in our
Mm-hmm.
space.
Yep.
And so it takes a collective, if you will,
Yep.
to stay on top of all of that. And
So,
that's what
like,
we've built.
yeah. Oh, and I've been to that. I've seen your work. I've seen the people who've benefited from your work, and it's like a home base for all these individuals who come in. And is it subscription based? Remind me, Marie, how you join as a member, right? And you become a member for a certain amount of time, and then you get all these benefits. Is that right?
Yeah, so we do a lot of things for free because a
Mhm.
rising tide lifts all boats. And
Yeah.
like people will say, why don't you advocate more for the industry? And I think the best way to advocate for the industry is for every individual who interacts with a career practitioner to have a good experience. To,
Okay.
right? I
Yep.
mean, because it doesn't matter how
Goal.
good I tell you career coaches are, if
Mm-hmm.
you experience a bad one-on-one interaction and
Mm-hmm.
you don't have someone that's got a structure or that has the skills they need, you're not going to think positively about the industry no matter what I
Right.
tell you. So,
Right. And that reduces trust, which lowers all boats, right? In a sense. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Well, now I've got some ideas about some questions on the red lights and the green light.
yeah.
However, first, want to ask you who is a person in your life who's really guided you. I always like asking people for maybe a person or a name who's influenced you to help you become the better version of Marie, whatever age that was. Do you have a person you would give a shout out to and how they helped you?
So there are so many,
Yeah.
especially since we've got this community.
Yep.
So the person that in middle school, so this is a long time ago, we're
Yep. Well,
going all
that's
the way
usually
back.
where people end up telling the story from, which is
Right.
I like to ask
Um,
it.
yeah. So in middle school, I feel like my life could have gone two directions. I was very rebellious. I was not a good kid. Like
I don't
some
see
people
this
that
in you
like that
at
surprises
all.
them when they see that. I was like, no. And I had a guidance counselor in middle school who saw, I think, that pivot. So
Hmm.
I can't remember, it was seventh or eighth grade. She let me go to the high school for math
Mm-hmm.
and be a teaching assistant for sixth grade math so
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't have to do eighth grade math because it
Okay.
was way like I was just bored out
Too
of my
easy.
mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Love
And
it.
so, yeah, so she made that all happen
Gosh.
for me.
Yeah.
And I went from kind of causing trouble, raising a little ruckus.
Mm-hmm.
I was, like I said, I was rebellious.
Mm-hmm.
And she took that and made it into this, like I took the SAT early. Like I just had all these opportunities academically
Mm.
that,
So channeled your energy toward something new, it sounds like.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And
Wow.
so when I look at careers,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just starting to get to that point where I'm comfortable talking about younger people,
Yep.
because now I have young people. I feel like
Right.
I can reconnect with that a little bit.
Yes.
But when we look at careers and we look at um, kids, we look at high school, there's all of this opportunity for people to either get edified by their strengths and get built up for that,
Mm-hmm.
or to be seen as different, problematic,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it might be.
Right.
And I think
Mm.
when individuals can take an interest in someone of any age,
Yes.
of any client age, right? That
Mm.
when they have someone who takes an interest in them, helps them see their own strengths, and then
Mm.
helps them transition those strengths into something
Mm-hmm.
positive, into something
Mm-hmm.
that's getting them where they want to go, or
Oh,
figuring
yeah.
out where they want to go and then getting
Yes.
themselves there. That just causes that ripple effect, right? Because it
Yes.
wasn't just about me, it was
Right.
my parents, now my current family, my current kids. I
Yes.
mean, you just look at that inflection point in
Yep.
someone's life. And
Yeah.
yeah,
So great. I love it. It's so
yeah,
great. And I can name the person who did that for me, help me learn passion for persuasion and rhetoric. And I think every listener here can also think of a person who's had an impact. And I always take this one moment to say, have you told them how meaningful they were for you? Because it's often a teacher, it's often someone in our youth. So shout out to all the teachers in the world who change lives like they really, really do. So thank you for sharing that, Marie. Let's look at, red light moments and green light moments when it comes to the small business owners you help. I mean, we're talking about usually, I think, companies that are either one person or maybe there's a small team of folks who are in the careers space in one of the categories you mentioned. And your role at CTL is to help them get better at their systems. I'm hearing the word systems a lot, and systematizing, and helping them focus on the person whose help has been asked for. So when you're working with these business owners, Marie, what are some early red lights that you see that they're really struggling with and they just can't figure out how to move the needle on owning their own business? What are some of those red lights?
yeah. The first one is more on the coaching practitioner side of things, but even in the
Okay.
resume writing world, we're seeing this come. So AI is here,
Oh gosh.
and
Yeah.
AI can give you information quickly.
Yep.
And unfortunately, it's not always great information, but a lot of times it actually is pretty good information, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It can be great and it can be not great at all. So
Yeah.
that's my experience anyway.
Yeah. Well, so coaches, especially in the career space, well, maybe specifically in the career space, a lot of times build their brand based on being the expert.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not a long-term strategy right now,
Okay.
because you being an expert in interview strategies, people can get that on AI, right? AI
Wow.
can tell them how to interview.
Yeah.
What they need a coach for is that transformation that we were just talking about, that person that causes the inflection point in someone's life. And that doesn't
Yes.
come from information or expertise.
Right.
that comes from human connection, deep listening, powerful questions,
Yes.
all of the things that a human brings that the information cannot bring.
Yep. Yep.
And so for small business owners, especially in this space, but I think it filters out to a lot of other spaces,
Mm-hmm.
you can't build your brand on being an expert anymore,
Hmm.
because that
So
it's easy.
how would you replace that word expert then? Like personalization, transformative skill sets? Like what would you replace that word with? Because that makes you go, huh, how could that be, right?
Yeah. Well, it really is the process and the guide,
Okay.
because AI might be able to tell you the process to go through to career change, but it can't guide you through it.
Right,
It
right.
can't, when you're stuck and you're in that like muck of
Yeah.
what do I do next, or I've got all these ideas,
Yes.
that you need that human to walk you through, be the sounding board, ask the powerful questions.
Yeah.
That's where our profession comes in. And even on the resume writing side,
Mm-hmm.
the prompts will say, put in your old resume and ask it to rewrite you one.
Oh,
Well,
brother.
90% of the people I see don't have great content. So you're
Right.
putting junk content in,
From
it's not getting any better.
going from bad to slightly less bad, right?
Right. And it
Well,
doesn't have
yeah.
a brand. It doesn't have that connection between what does the audience really want,
Right.
and what are your stories that show you can bring that value.
Mm-hmm.
AI can't help you identify that in
Amen.
a deep way,
Yeah.
if you don't know it already.
Yeah. Well, Deborah Boggs was on here a few episodes ago and talked about table stakes, right? Some of the terminology that folks put on their resumes, those are table stakes, like great resume or great communication skills, right? Excellence in written and communication skills. It's like the top of every resume ever, and can strategize and has clear objectives toward the path of innovation. These are like sound bites that make us want to kind of, just turn the page over, because not only are they table stakes, but they're just wishy-washy. They don't even have stick to them, really. And so I completely see where AI can steer a new business owner in the wrong direction. There's another thought coming to my mind about the AI tool that I use for clients, which is called Udly AI, and it's a rehearsal gym where you can go in, and maybe you're familiar with this, Marie, but it'll spit back, number of fillers, percentage of eye contact in the camera, conciseness, repeated words, sentence starters, and how you're doing that. And it spits out fantastic data, even on like rate of speech, pacing, all these great things. But it's not me. And so I've learned over time that it's a great partner for me to look at those data points with my client. But a lot of times the suggestions it gives to my client, I'm like, you can ignore that, because you and I both know what you're really working on, and it's this. And that's just never going to be bridged. And so it's a helper, but it doesn't replace.
And it can give you data to make more effective strategies, more
Right.
effective feedback, but
Yes.
it can't replace
Right.
that altogether for most people. And
Right.
what I tell my, especially resume writers, it's like if someone is going to use AI to write their resume, they were a DIYer anyway. They were going
Right.
to read a book or whatever. They were going to
Mm-hmm.
try to do it themselves anyway. They were never your client. You're not losing
Interesting.
that client to
Yeah.
AI. And
Okay.
actually, what we've already seen it hit its peak. And now most of our writers are reporting people coming back and saying, so I tried AI to write my
Yes.
resume.
Yes.
Nope,
It's
I
not
need help.
working. It's like, well, ding ding. Good job figuring that out a little bit earlier. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, it was a
So,
really fast blip
yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good, right? I mean, let's get back to basics and brass tacks for the human connection. So, Marie, if that's one, I mean, I wasn't surprised to hear you say AI would be a red light. Are there any other big red lights that you can think of that are, coming to mind before we go to some of the green lights?
Yeah, just quickly, another red light is ignoring AI, because it does
Mm.
make you faster, it makes you better, it does great research, it helps pull out themes. My career practitioners, most of them now are kind of on board, but there's some people that took a while to get on board. And it was like,
Mhm.
well, that's not the answer either. You can't
Right.
you can't ignore it because that's silly. It's a
Yeah.
great tool.
Right.
The other red light I just see is people struggling to figure out how they add value to their specific client. Like, we help our clients all day long.
Yeah.
How are you different? What unique value do you add? But then as a solopreneur trying to figure that out for themselves, that is the transformation that I love to
Oh,
see.
I
So
love
we
that.
did a couple of
Yes.
branding classes,
Yes.
and I every time the coach comes in thinking they're getting tools for their client, and it's a transformation city for all the coaches in the group as well, because we just don't get time to focus on that for
Yeah.
ourselves either.
Yes. Oh, for sure. That's a difficult task to look from, it's hard to see the fishbowl from the outside, right? Of the
Yeah.
value and the passions. And that's a beautiful exercise to be able to do. Well, if you're talking to a room full of career um, you know, s- small business owners in the career space, as you do when you're at your conferences, for example, and you're bringing to them some of these things that are going to keep them stuck, right, at that red light. Eventually, I'm sure you're kind of pulling them towards something else, which is some green light pieces or some strategies, and they're going to come through that yellow light of wanting to sort of check that out. What are some of the green light strategies, tactics, tools, leaps that you hope people will take to get their businesses to hitting that green light of go a little bit faster?
Yeah, and it's so challenging, especially like I said, most of the people in my space are from helping professions. We're used
Yeah.
to kind of being behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so getting to figure out, where are you going to stand out?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like for you?
Yes. Yes.
And it's not about how to post on LinkedIn or how
Mm-hmm.
frequently. Everybody wants to
Mm-hmm.
go to the logistics, but that's not what keeps us from doing it. I mean, come on,
Right.
we all know how, and
Yes.
whatever, you could figure out how frequently. It's that vulnerability of
Mm.
being visible
Mm-hmm.
and of putting ourselves out there.
Yes. Ooh.
And we've got to find a way to do it that works for us. And
Yes.
that's what a lot of the push and pull is for coaches. And then, of course, it's the same push and pull for our clients, of how are you
Mm-hmm.
going to build your visibility in a way that works for you. And I love to take a strengths-based approach to this.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like to speak? Do you like to write?
Mm-hmm.
What do you like to do?
Mm-hmm.
And then
That's
let's
searching
figure
with
out,
brilliance.
right. Figure out how to do that on a platform that is where your clients are hanging out.
That's a great approach, the strengths approach and I do that sort of similar path to growing a speaker, right? When you are like, what are you good at? What are you good at? What stories are you good at telling? What are you, do you have a great voice? And we should put you somewhere on podcasts or more in front of larger crowds. Are you great? Are you humorous? Are you funny? Like, what are your strengths as a person? And let's push, expand on those, and then it will naturally help those weaknesses and red lights diminish is what I have found. And that's true for myself too, right? If I can hit the gas on some of my own strengths, then I focus more on what you focus on grows. And that's just really true. So that's a great green light, the strengths finder or just strengths growth from those places. Do you find people are resistant to some of these pathways once you set them down in front of them, Marie? What's the vibe when you're bringing new information to new business owners or maybe even existing business owners? And are they hungry to try these things out? Do you find them resistant?
Yeah, it's so hard because there's so much noise about, like, video is the way to grow your business, surveys and quizzes are the way to grow your business,
Mhm.
events are the way to grow your business. And what I tell people is, I know someone with multi-million-dollar businesses that does each one of those things. So
Mhm.
it's not about what you choose,
Mhm.
it's about choosing it and executing it well. And
Mhm.
so a lot of us, and I have been totally, I do this too, but we skip from one thing to the next trying to find the thing that works.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. So we're trying events for 2 months, and then we try a podcast for 2 months. And then
Yes.
we're like, none of this works. It's like,
Yes.
well, it doesn't work that way. Like,
No.
pick the thing that you want to try, and I promise you that you can make it successful if you execute it
Yes.
best way possible.
I just was off of a call about my own self and thinking like, how easy it is to treat social media or podcasting or blogging about my book or you doing these things. Like it's like window dressing unless it really is getting you somewhere that you are trying to go. So doing the thing is the only way to do the thing. You can't talk about doing the thing, think about doing the thing, write down the thing, do the thing. And then you're actually in a place of traction that's action that leads to traction. So I think that's what you're getting at because it's very top of mind for me today, too. Yeah.
Yeah. And just to realize that anything's going to take time to build.
Right.
And you do want to have, some measures and some milestones and some people that you're paying attention to. But just when we're trying to do millions of things,
Yes.
none of them are going to
None of them
work.
can be
You
done well.
pick
Right.
one, maybe two, and
Right.
you dive a little deeper,
Mhm.
and that's going to
Mhm.
have the results that you're looking for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just thought of this question, Marie. What's like a green light for you that like in terms of like what brings you the most joy of the work that you're doing with all these amazing people? You are one of the best networkers I know in terms of just what you said at the top of the call, just the ability to be so plugged in and accommodating or collaborating, I mean, as far as what people do. But yeah, what lights you up? What gets you to feel the most alive?
So I love the connection piece, which
Hmm.
is interesting because I'm an introvert,
Right.
but I do love creating the space. And sometimes I have to be careful because I'll kind of create the space and then back out. And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
no, 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 like
No, you gotta go
that's not a
in.
good space for a business owner. But I love to create that space where magic happens. And
Mm.
like you were talking about at the symposium that you went to,
Mhm.
there are still collaborations in our industry that exist because they met at that event. The
Yes.
same thing in
Yes.
California a few years
Yes.
later. There's like whole businesses that exist
Yes.
because people met each other at that event.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And so
true. I
it's like,
mean, honestly, 9 years later, and I have worked with some of the folks I met in Denver when I was with you. And, I've got all kinds of stories about how that event was really a mustard seed for me. And I would be less those people, minus those people in my life had I not sat down with coffee at Ziggy's over there on Drake or wherever we went
yeah.
when you were still in your little office back there. Oh, that's so great. Marie, are there any other green light moments that business owners should be thinking about before we move to our closing question? Anything else?
So there's a book that came out about this recently, and I was like, oh, crumb, I've been teaching about that for way longer than that at
Have
work.
written that book?
When that book comes out, and you're like, oh, that was my book.
Yes.
So it's these little risks that add up.
Ooh.
So I started my business, right? I left CSU, I started my business. Actually, that was a little risk because I was making so little money at the university at that point. I quickly made it in my business, but like
Okay.
no problem because I was just making such little money. So it was a little
Hmm.
risk,
Hmm.
but I did well, right?
Hmm.
It was
Yep.
successful. So then I took the little risk of, well, it wasn't a little risk. When I purchased Career Thought Leaders and Resume
Yep.
Writing Academy, it
The
was actually
next
a fairly
risk.
big risk, but it didn't feel big because I already had that
Yeah.
success.
Mm.
And so then, like every time you take a little risk and you succeed, it gives you more lessons, network, skills to be able to do it again. And what
Mhm.
I see a lot of
Yes.
times in small business is that people don't have, and sometimes we don't have the support structure to take those risks. So get it, right? We got to
Yeah.
find it, we got to build
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Because if you're not taking those little risks,
Hmm.
and I see this a lot, people stuck doing the same thing all the time.
Mm.
They feel stuck, they
Mm.
feel stagnant.
Hmm.
And how can we take just that one little risk
Hmm.
to make a
Hmm.
difference,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
step out of the stuck?
Oh, that's beautiful. I think that is I'm so glad I asked for one more green light because that one really hit me between the eyes on a number of levels. And it's such a great encouragement to our listeners that they get out there and take that little next risk. And that's how we grow. I mean, we just have to try new things, for a certain amount of time, beta test your ideas, right? I have a good friend and colleague, Eleni Kalakos, who says in her book, Touch the Sky, fear cannot hit a moving target.
That's powerful.
Boom. Like, isn't that powerful? So I credit her, but I say it to myself, to my clients, and I'm saying it to all of you. Fear cannot hit a moving target. So in other words, move and your fear will dissipate because you are moving forward, you are acting, you are taking a small risk, or even reframing that as just a small step. If risk feels scary, right? Take a small step, whatever it might be. You aren't gonna do anything but learn, no matter which way it goes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I love
And
it.
you always have those failures but realizing too that failure is, it's in the eye of the beholder. So
Yeah,
that event that you came to in Colorado was
yeah.
my inaugural event
Yeah.
as the head of Career Thought Leaders.
Mhm.
And we thought we'd have about twice as many people as ended up signing up
Oh, I didn't know that.
because that's the events that they had held, but I was holding it in a new space, like in
Yes.
Colorado instead of in
Yep.
Baltimore. And so we had significantly less people
Mm.
than were expected to attend.
Mhm.
And so that, like, for a while, I looked at that as a failure.
Wow.
Right. Because it was way smaller than it was supposed to be, and blah, blah, blah. Right. You have all of these
Yeah.
things.
Yeah, it's like, what are you feeding the monsters in your mind, right? Because to me, I'm like, oh, that was such a success. And it was for me, but it seemed like one for you. So, let's just settle it right now, Marie. It was a success.
Right. And then things happen
Yeah.
all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You have these moments where you're like, that didn't go like I wanted it to, but what are you going to do with that?
Yeah, learn. Right. You're just going to learn and grow and pivot and turn and ask for help when you need it. Take a break, take a breather when you need one. All great, great feedback for sure. Marie, what's happening coming up? I know you always do these annual events with your consortium. So do you want to talk about that? What's coming up in the industry? If you see anything that our listeners might benefit from, tell us some things that are on your mind.
Yeah, man, we are in a nice little place of turmoil here in the
Really
workforce in the
interesting
US.
place. Yes. Yes.
Layoffs, unpredictability.
Yes.
And like you said before, it's just about keeping moving
Yeah.
and figuring out what the next step looks like. For our industry, I mean, our industry is trying to figure out how do we help all these people?
Oh
What's
my
the
gosh.
workforce going to look like? What's going to
Yes.
be available? What we do know, looking out a little bit further, so the predictions from the World Economic Forum for 2025 to 2030 is a 7% growth, which is 78 million jobs growth worldwide in the
Wow.
next 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Did you
challenge
say
is,
70 million?
yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, so the prediction from the last one, which was 2023 to 2027, was a loss of jobs.
Okay.
And then the prediction from 2025 to 2030 is this huge gain in jobs. So it was a 2% loss, now predicted to be a 7% gain.
Was it accurate, Marie? The last predictions from the forum?
Well, so this is the challenge, is that
Mhm.
we're still in that space of losing jobs.
Mm.
And
Right. Well,
so,
because it's not over yet, right? The time
right,
frame. Right. Okay.
right.
Gotcha.
And so some of the other stuff I've read is said like the next 2 years or so is going to be a challenge because people
Yes.
are replacing employees with AI, but that
Yeah.
those new jobs that the technology is going to be creating aren't necessarily all created yet.
Right.
So we're in a tough place,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of bad timing for some of the
Mm-hmm.
other powers that be to be eliminating jobs that didn't necessarily need to be eliminated right
Right.
this minute.
Right.
Um, so it's being holding on, finding that enterprising tool that we all need, whether it doesn't mean that you're going
Yeah.
to be your own boss, but it's this enterprising, what does the market need and how do I plug in?
Yeah.
And many
Be
small business
scrappy.
owners aren't great at that. We need to get better at it.
Mhm.
And our clients, job seekers, normal career employee type people haven't had to build that skill, but they need
Yes.
it now, and they'll
Mhm.
need it for the rest of their lives to really look at a market and say, what is the gap, or what's the need?
Yes.
What's the need that's coming soon, so that
Mhm.
I can be ready to solve that problem, to fit
Mhm.
into that space,
Mhm.
because that's going to be on me, not
Mhm.
on some company or somebody that's going to help me connect the dots, except for
Mhm.
career coaches, of course. The career coach
Mhm.
can help you connect the dots.
Right.
But it's, that is, we've seen that coming. It's been coming. It's been happening for a long time. And now you're
Mhm.
just seeing this kind of intensifying of it, that there are still
Yeah.
market needs. There are still jobs to be done. But it's going to be up to individuals to figure out how to communicate how their skills, and not the fluffy stuff, right? We're
Yeah.
not talking about excellent communication skills. We're
Right.
talking about how their hard, qualifications
Yep.
plug in and make business easier for
Mhm.
people who are trying to do business. Um,
Do you
and so
think those
that's
certifications from online, universities are going to surge in the interest of differentiation for folks as they are looking for more jobs and the competitive market kind of really comes into full force? Do you see that as a possibility? Is that typically
yeah.
what has been happening?
Well, and so it's interesting in the World Economic Forum report, both the old one and now this new one, vocational education teachers and
Hmm.
higher education teachers, which is interesting because you see universities struggling and
Hmm.
universities shutting down, but there's this whole other space, whether it's, online, the online parts of universities, which
Right.
don't require as many employees and things. So they're
Right.
closing. It's just the same as everywhere else. Just because something is closing doesn't mean that there's not this huge opportunity in the
Hmm.
other branch of the
Hmm.
organization.
Hmm.
And so you are seeing more online education, more certifications. I think it was DU. DU just launched a certificate in prompting, AI prompting, which I feel like a little
Oh,
bit behind the times. That was kind of 2 years ago, DU, but okay.
well, it is such a thing, needing to know how to use the prompts and be efficient at that because you can really go down rabbit holes with that. So I guess I'm behind the times, Maria. I need to go get that certification.
Yeah, well, a lot of the tools will just tell you how to write your prompt better. But learning about those things is important.
Yes.
So that's what we're seeing. And what I'm seeing specifically in the career space is, again, just the need for this community. So we started a community focused on AI in career services
Hmm.
in January of 2020, whatever, like right
Oh, I
after
remember this.
ChatGPT launched. So we've
Yes.
been doing it for a really long time,
Yeah.
in this space. Like, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah. Yes.
we've been
Yes.
doing it since the beginning, but that's just because we were actually talking about AI and career services and recruiting before ChatGPT, because
Hmm.
those
The
things
resumes
existed
were
before
going through all
ChatGPT.
these robots to see what, yeah, that was already a problem in the career space. It was just not as graduated as AI, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. So those communities for all professionals, everybody who's out there, I think that's going to be the next big thing. And it's
Mhm.
been coming for the last few years. But this importance of community, the importance of professional community outside of your
Okay.
workplace, because your
Okay.
workplace is not going to keep you up on those trends
Nope.
anymore. They're too busy
Nope.
digging into their own, like, they're too busy
Hmm.
digging out their own snowstorm, right?
Yep. Right.
So you've got to find those professional communities, whether it's the, American Marketing Association or
Mhm.
whatever it is, where you
Mhm.
can be kept up to date on the
That's a great
skills,
tip. Yeah.
but also have the network that is going to help
Yes.
you move from one thing to the next, because it's going to
Yes.
happen fast.
Connect your lines, hook arms, right? I like that. That's a really great, valuable suggestion to go out and join an association in your industry to get connected and stay abreast of what's happening so that when you need to, you can ask for help or be of help to somebody who's in need and then just staying in action. So for people who are kind of facing the headwinds, is that the main task there? Stay active, stay in motion, and just the mindset piece is a big part of it. That's one thing I've learned over the years. The more I work with individuals in, higher levels of organizations, the mindset piece can be very treacherous ground for us. So none of us are immune to that. So keeping that positive self-talk, avoiding burnout, taking time to rest, relax, and rejuvenate, being with your loved ones, all those things, they really matter. Even breathing. I used to think breathing was such a bunch of bunk, Marie. I don't know if you ever-
I used to call it woo-woo. Right? That's a lot of woo-woo stuff. No way.
Oh yeah, like now, 2020, I was like, people were like all about this breathing stuff, and I'm like, this is woo-woo. This is ridiculous. And then I was wrong. I realized that it does actually reset your brain, and just a few of those deep belly breaths, diaphragmatic breathing, which I recommend for speaking, right? That's how we get better at speaking. Anyway, these pieces really matter as well. So there's the head and the heart part of everything, and it's not immune to your industry at all. So thank you, Marie. This is such a rich conversation. As always, I have one nagging question from the beginning of our conversation, which is there anyone from any of your days, early on, mid, like, is there like a person's story or win or like job that they found? Does anybody stick out to you in terms of a person, whether it's back from your resume writing days or your small business days now? Like anything stand out that like really just made you soar because of their success? Just wondering if anybody sticks out. You don't have to name them, but like the story maybe.
Oh man, so that's a big one. When I was in grad school, I was friends with a person who well, we're still friends, but she was starting in an organization that just didn't seem to fit with her values. So she was in HR and she was kind of, I don't know if I would say a little hippie, but just not, you kind of think of HR as these very straight-laced people, right? And she did not fit that mold.
Okay.
And I watched her story. So she got into that organization. She excelled there. She became a manager. She, then went on actually to move into a different space. But what I love about seeing those types of stories is that oftentimes we think that I can't change myself and still be successful. But what I loved about her, and I've seen it so many times in my work, is that when you really understand what is core to you, like taking out her earrings to go to job fairs, that was not part of her core. She
Right.
didn't feel like that was inauthentic. She wasn't stuck in like, oh, I can't work for this organization because they don't like my tattoos and my earrings. There was a more core piece there to the work that she was doing and the work that she wanted to do. So I think in this world, we get told a lot, we get all these competing messages, but one of them that I hear it a lot is, you should find a place where you can be authentic at work. But don't get too focused on the superficial parts of that authenticity because it's not necessarily about getting to wear your earrings or getting to show off your tattoos. For some people, it might be.
Right.
But what is really important to you? And when you can figure that out and connect that to a company's mission, or if you're a small business, connect that to your company's mission.
Yeah, your mission, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Oh, that's
just to
beautiful.
not be afraid and to not, it takes time
Yeah.
to figure out that depth. And I think for a lot of us, we're constantly figuring out that
Yep.
depth, and that's okay.
Yep.
But to realize, one, nobody can be totally authentic at work. And that's also what I love about her story, is like the practicality piece of realizing like
it's not possible.
Right.
Right.
And then
Eating ideas.
yeah. And then when you really know your core, I consider it to be like your tree roots.
Yes.
And that actually makes you more flexible.
Ooh.
So last little story, when I was in Utah, they had a huge windstorm and all of these huge trees flew over. Big, huge. I think they were oak trees.
Yeah.
And someone said, well, that's because they have a really narrow root system. And so we don't want to have that. We want to have these deep roots where we really understand who we are, how we add value, how we want to add value, how we want to make a difference that goes deeper, so that when we've got to change industries or we have to change what we're doing, or maybe even we have to offer a different service as a small business owner because it meets the needs of the time, that we can be more flexible because we've got these strong roots versus trying to blow in the wind and be whatever somebody else wants us to be, and we end up falling over.
Oh, I love it. When we kind of want to be the aspen grove, right? Where the roots are not only strong, but interconnected to others, which is taps the other pieces you mentioned earlier. We want to be part of an aspen grove that's got solid earth to grab a hold of and each other's roots underground, which is the trees, all along the Front Range and in the mountains here in Colorado. So to stick with the tree analogy.
Yeah, actually the biggest aspen grove, I think it's like the biggest, it's in Utah, is the
Okay, there you
grove.
go.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
we just nailed that ending right there. That's so great.
And that
Thank
collaboration is so key. And your point about the competition versus collaboration, like there's a time to be competitive.
Sure.
This is one of the other stories of clients. She said she worked at Xerox, and she said, I can tell you why Xerox failed. Everyone was so busy competing against the person in next to them, competing against the person in the cubicle next to them, that no one was looking for how is the company going to compete in the new world.
Oh, yeah. Too narrow, like the oak tree, the viewpoint. Oh, beautiful. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, fantastic. What a great conversation, as I knew it would be, Marie. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your stories with us and our listeners. Tell folks how they can find you and what is coming up. Do you want to share anything that people should be aware of to look up your events and stuff? Just let us know.
Yeah, so I mentioned we do a lot of stuff for free. Our YouTube channel, careertl.com/YouTube, has a bunch of resources for anyone that, we target trainings for career services providers, but obviously they're helpful to job seekers and anyone else that's in those spaces. And so that's where we post all of our free content. Like you said, we do 3 big events a year. We do a tech jam in the summer that's all focused on the technologies being used in our industry. Then we do a career jam in November that's looking at the trends and ahead and big speakers and what are those trends. And then in April, we get together live in person. This year coming up here in 2025, we'll be in Baltimore for our 15th anniversary back in Baltimore. I know. And then we go around the country, and actually we've been going to Europe every 3 years except for the COVID years. So we'll be continuing. We're global. We have people in 40 different countries that are part of our community. So
great. So great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Marie. Once again, what a great conversation. Thank you everyone out there for listening. So many good gems here. Fear cannot hit a moving target, keeping your steps going, taking small risks, so many great things. So share this with anyone who's maybe looking for a new role, who's trying to start a new business, and anyone who would just enjoy this conversation. Thank you, Marie. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll be back again soon with another episode, another great leader. And until then, get out there, do some kind things to the others in your orbit, and get out there and nail it. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.